times have you heard this story of Mary and Martha? How many times have you come away from this story with the feeling that Mary's attention to Jesus' teaching is better and more important than Martha's work of hospitality? In a society that so overvalues work, reading the Bible as preaching against busyness can be helpful and life-giving. I imagine that this congregation, like any other, would not run as it does without the Marthas in our midst, the women and men who regularly roll up their sleeves and get done what needs to be done in the vein of hospitality, organization, and responsibility. I hope here that if this is the reading you have heard, or that you prefer to hear, you also hold with it a balancing notion of doing this work motivated by love. When we offer our work to God from a place of love and adoration and gratitude, what others do or don't do doesn't enter the equation. When we offer our work to God from our heart, we find ourselves called to give all of what we can, no more and no less. Our work is about us and God. There's no need to compare ourselves and others, to wonder why we or they are doing more or give more. Those comparisons are about our own ego, not about love and God. Because truly, the work of the Marthas and the Marys of the world, though different, each have worth. Another way of preaching this gospel passage that has become more popular, or at least more commonplace, in light of women's lib and the gender equality movement. Everything has its season. There is time to work and time to study, time to relax, and in each of those seasons, we are called to be fully present, unencumbered by the cares and concerns of other seasons, for this time, like those, will too soon pass away. Housekeeping and hospitality are important, and Jesus has come to Bethany on his way to Jerusalem, on his way to the cross. He senses he will not be with his friends and followers much longer. It is imperative that they hear what he has to say, and not just hear it as one who has the luxury of sitting at their teacher's feet again and again and again, but as one who must in this moment take, eat, and digest Jesus' words so that they become a part of their very being. What if both of these interpretations miss the mark? What if it isn't about valuing devotion more than hospitality, or being awake and present to the time at hand? What if the message here is instead about seeing and living into the possibilities to which God calls us? Martha's work of hospitality is what was expected of her. She was busy making sure her guests had everything they needed, work which the disciples would have thought of, and more often than we might like to admit, we think of as women's work which was valued and also expected, hospitality being a through-running theme in Luke's gospel. What was not expected was that Mary would be as a disciple, sitting at Jesus' feet, listening to him teach. If hospitality, by default or expectation, was women's work, discipleship was men's work. Luke's gospel has long been described as having a more progressive point of view. The role of women within Jesus' movement is regularly lifted up, or at least the author tries to anyway, even as Luke falls victim to his own context, unable to fully step outside of the world in which he lives to understand how the assumptions he holds prevents even him from recognizing and understanding the fullness of God's creation and Jesus' mission. Women are part of the Jesus movement, but only in supporting roles, providing for the group out of their resources, and later tending to Jesus' crucified body. Active discipleship is men's work. But this is precisely where we find Mary, listening and learning at Jesus' feet, right alongside men. Might it be possible that Jesus' admonition to Martha about the better part is not about Martha's hospitality or Mary's devotion, as both are valued in the Gospels, but instead that Mary has not just visualized, but manifests the possibility of doing something different, being something different, someone different, in a way that few, if any, would expect or allow, given her station in life. Might the point be that Mary assumes she is worthy to sit at Jesus' feet, and she acts on it? She makes the change that Jesus is commending. Mary makes the decision to live into a possibility that stretches society's binding assumptions in the presence of the one whom God promises all things are possible. Might it be that Jesus' words are not an admonition of exasperation, but instead deep affection for Martha? Martha, Martha, because I love you, I want you to not be distracted by your work or trapped by your role, but to grasp the freedom that is yours, to imagine all that is possible for you, just as Mary has done. When we claim this freedom as our own, instead of being enslaved to the expectations, the powers and principalities of empire would have us believe we must fulfill, what do we see? Who do we see as worthy? How do we see ourselves? How do we see others? Do we see others? What if we were to be brave enough to see more in ourselves than we previously thought possible, knowing that we are filled with love that comes from the bottom of God's heart? What if we were to extend that vision to others, being brave enough to truly see all of God's creation as God's beloved? How powerful would that be? I invite you to pray with me. God of unnatural wisdom, you gave us Jesus, our rabbi, to question the roles we play, the submissions we enforce. May your living truth free us from the lie of exclusion and make us all learners and doers of your word. Through Jesus Christ, our teacher and liberator. Amen.